Good afternoon, good morning, whatever time it is when you are watching this. Welcome back to our friendly Tech Help Hour. I am your son in tech, Mackenzie, here to make you feel more confident, more capable, and more safe with modern technology. Welcome to our live stream for today. We're really happy to have you, and you're going to love the topic. But as always, just a couple of reminders. You know, I love the reminders. So, reminder number one, please visit our website if you haven't already. I know we talk about a lot of different topics, but some of these things may require a repeat, or maybe you need a little bit more time, or maybe you need a little explanation. Head over to the website and grab our calendar and set up a time for a one on one session, right? And when we take time one on one, we're able to answer any of your specific questions, and I'll record it for you so that way you're able to review it if you ever run into a hang up again. So, really looking forward to continuing our topics for this week. We had a nice time earlier in the week talking about technology, but this one I think is one many have been waiting on. In fact, it may have been the first request that we received from our first live stream. So, we're finally getting to it after a couple of weeks. We're going to be talking about social media. And obviously, social media is something that is common. It's normalized now. We're about 20 or so years in to having social media via technology as a thing. And so our theme today is social media playground or danger zone. Yeah, I know that was unnecessarily dramatic, but it's true. There are some pitfalls that can take place when we're on social media, and we're going to talk about how to identify those, but also how to just avoid them. Just not even have to think about them because we'll know how to navigate. So first of all, you probably know some social media platforms, right? Like you probably know, and this is important for you to understand from the very beginning. We're not going to get into the details of every single social media platform out there. There's too many, and there's a reason why we're not going to get into the specifics of each one. And there's some we're going to avoid altogether. Like I'll be talking about social media in general, but these same rules don't necessarily relate to certain platforms. And I'll explain at the end which ones those are, why I'm not talking about how to use those platforms, and why you may want to be cautious. But do whatever you want. If you feel comfortable, by all means, go for it. So let's get into it. Our very first point, of course, we always have to go back to our illustration, right? The thing that makes it all stick for us is that idea that the internet is like a highway, right? This is we're going to keep going back to this over and over and over because it's easier to make sense of what's happening on the internet when we have an illustration like this. So, if the internet is just like the highway, right? We got that. But to get on the highway or to be on the highway, you can't take a bicycle, you can't walk. It's illegal. You have to use a car. So your device that you use to connect to the internet, of course, this is like a car that you would drive on the highway. So now, if we're trying to understand what social media even is, what even is it as a concept, it could be like a place where you would take your car and go with the intent of meeting people. It could be a clubhouse. It could be an art gallery, a place where we, share art. Or it could be like the drive-in movie theater, right? It's a place where you would take your car to be with other people. Social media is the same thing, right? It's about using your electronic device to be around, to associate with, to share things with other people. Social media, right? It's not that complicated. Why is social media so popular? Since the advent of Facebook back in the day, and really we could go back further than that, there's been a lot of excitement and activity around social media. So you may even be wondering, like, why is it popular? What is the hype? Well, one of the biggest things that really makes us excited about technology is the fact that it allows us to connect to each other very quickly, right? So obviously I am a millennial. And in the early days of Facebook, it was actually designed for college students, right? If you've seen the Social Network movie, you know that it was started on a Harvard campus, and that original purpose was for students to be able to communicate together. And this allowed a lot of really useful things. For example, I remember in the early days of Facebook, we would use it almost exclusively for school related things. So let's say I was taking a 201 class, and somebody I knew from high school, maybe they were coming up and making their schedule for next year. I could share my notes from my class with them. So that would save them time on studying. Maybe they didn't necessarily need to buy the textbook because I could provide the notes that I had. And so it made it so it was much easier to get good grades. And this isn't cheating, it's literally just sharing the notes. So it was easier to study. There were also really cool apps built in to the early days of Facebook. One of my favorites was called Pick a Prof or Pick a Professor. What was cool about that was it would take every teacher in the school all the hours that they had classes, and if you had taken that teacher at that time, they would tell you what that professor was like. So I remember there was one professor, I had to take accounting because I was a business major. And everyone said, do not take 8 a.m. accounting with this particular professor at this particular university because he is very grouchy in the morning. And everyone that takes his 1 o'clock class says he is a totally different person in the afternoon. Needless to say, when it was time to sign up, uh, all the 1 p.m. were gone, and I had to take the 8 a.m. I learned the hard way, but it was really cool that I could get that information via social media. So it was that connecting with other students. We were able to share information really, really quickly. Also, there was another social media platform that came out at about the same time as Facebook called MySpace. And on MySpace, it was a little different. This was a little more about individuality. So if you wanted to express yourself, whether it be your taste in music or your favorite things that you liked as far as movies or books or characters that you like, MySpace kind of allowed you to do exactly what it sounds like. It was MySpace. It was a place where you could just share the things that you like, photos, and things of that nature. And so if a person wanted to get to know you, it was really easy. They could go to your MySpace and you'd have information about yourself on there. And so that connectivity was the thing, right? That really drove the hype and the excitement and the popularity around social media, that ability to connect. And that's still the main reason people like to use social media. I'm sure you do the same thing, right? Um, it allows you to connect with people, your family, your friends. You can keep up with people from your past. Think about this. If you graduated from high school, let's say in the 70s or maybe even the early 80s, if you moved away from the town that you grew up in and you went to college, or your friends moved away from that town, when would you see them again? Maybe, maybe around the holidays if everyone came back to visit their parents, or maybe you'd see them at like a 5 or 10 year um, anniversary. I can't remember what they call those. 'Cause this is this white hair I've got. It makes me forget those basic terms like that. Oh, the class reunion, right? You may see them at the 5 or 10 year class reunion. But so much time would have passed between the last time you saw them and that moment. You would lose friends essentially. But for my generation, we were born essentially with social media. So we've never lost contact. That can be good or bad, depending on the type of people you went to school with. But for me, it's been amazing. People that I was literally in kindergarten with, like my first school interactions, we've kept up all the way through school, all the way through college. We're adults now. We have careers. Now I've seen their kids grow up and go to school, and now they're getting ready to go to college. And we never had to lose touch. So that connectivity is by far one of the most exciting things about technology. And you can connect not just with people that you know or people that you've known in the past. And I'm sure a lot of you have done that. You know, you may go to If this was such and such high school, this is graduating class 1973, and you all join there, and you're able to keep up with each other, and that's really cool. But there's other things, right? If you've got hobbies like gardening or cooking or travel or whatever you into, there's groups on social media that you can join, or people that share things like experiences that they've had in places. Maybe you've just been dying to go to the north of Italy and there's someone that's been, and they can tell you about that special little cafe or this little cove that no one ever visits, right? It's nice to be able to connect around people and things that you care about in an efficient way. That is the main driver of popularity when it comes to social media. But there's also the stimulation and react relaxation that we can get from enjoying the media aspect of social media. So, and it can be intentional, like, for example, we can go on social media with the intent to learn something, right? That's very, very stimulating. Maybe you're unfamiliar with something, and this is one of the most exciting things about YouTube is you can just figure out something. People have recorded themselves doing all sorts of activities. I remember once I was living in a different place. I drove a car that at that point maybe it was 10 years old, and one of the headlamps went out, and I had no clue how to change it. And something in me just said, go check YouTube. And sure enough, someone with my exact car, someone with the exact same situation, had a video where they showed themselves changing the headlamp on that car. It saved me so much money. I didn't have to ask anyone for help. I could just do it on my own. And that sort of like stimulation is really, really cool. So you can learn a lot on social media. There's all sorts of people that talk about art, that talk about music. I recently started following a guy on YouTube. He takes Michael Jackson songs and he has like the full breakdown, every single layer that Michael Jackson and Quincy Jones put into music, and he analyzes each layer and shows you how they fit together. And that's so cool. I love learning stuff like that. And I'm sure you've seen things where you're just so excited to learn about them, like whether it's gardening or whether it's learning a new skill or maybe just seeing something funny, right? That may also be educational. So that's one of the nice things about social media, again, that drives that popularity is you can get mental stimulation. There's also the relaxation aspect of it, right? You can just hear some music, or if you're a person that's maybe really, really social, but you live alone, if you wanted to have the sound of a show or a movie on, you can just hop on a social media platform and either join a live stream like this where someone is talking and you get that sense of being with someone, which is always nice. Or if you're a person, maybe you're approaching your retirement and you just need someone's voice to be with you, there's audiobooks, there's podcasts, there's just so many things that can help you to relax or to be entertained. And I remember back in the early days of the internet, the internet was so slow, so you couldn't really upload longer videos. Like, and live streaming was not even an option. The way I'm able to talk directly to you ones watching this live, that wasn't even an option. So the videos were short, but it required people to be really creative to tell stories in a very short amount of time, and that was really nice. But because of various different factors, the main one being increase in technology, now we've got so much more content out there, which is of course a great thing. So there's so much to do and to learn, whether you want to just again relax or have something to mentally stimulate you. And there's one other thing that you can get um, on social media, and that drives its popularity, and that is information, specifically information in the form of news. Because now with live streaming, a person can be at on the scene. They can be on the scene and share in real time an event that's transpiring. This is extremely, extremely useful because things can happen so quickly, just instantaneously. So it's beneficial for the news media in general that people can provide this information and you can avoid danger. I remember once I was about to head out. I was in Atlanta and I was about to head out, and I was on my way to the car and just happened to be scrolling Facebook, and someone was live on the street I was planning to go to, and there was a shooting happening. I could have been there, but thankfully, because someone was live streaming, I didn't even put myself in harm's way, and I was also able to avoid a lot of traffic, and I was able to go somewhere else. So that information that we can get as a result of social media is really cool. And it's not just things in the form of like danger when it comes to the news. There's all sorts of cool things that you can get by means of social media. For example, a friend of mine recently visited Iceland, and at night they went out and they were live streaming the Northern Lights, and so you could see in real time that beautiful display, and they were on for like hour. So much beauty, and I didn't even have to leave my own home to be able to see it in HD. So these three things really drive that popularity of social media. It's just there's so much interesting stuff that you can do. Those are really the big three of the good of social media, right? Being able to connect with people that you knew in the past or people that you have a similar interest with, to be able to be stimulated mentally or learn something, or to be able to relax your mind, but also to get information, things that you're curious about, things that you've wondered about. So feel free, throw in the chat, the way you like to use social media when it comes to that. Are you more of a looking for stimulation? Are you looking to connect? Or are you looking for information? I'm very curious about this audience. I suspect that because you're watching a video like this, you probably like a lot of information, but I don't know. I'm just curious. Feel free to throw it in the chat, and I'll definitely respond as I see them. So that's the good of social media, right? That there's so much fun, so much stimulation and enjoyment that we can have there. We can learn a new language, we can learn technology, we can chat with friends, we can catch up with our favorite band that's on tour. Um, that's the good. But there's also some risks. We won't say bad, but there are some risks on social media that we need to be very transparent about. And this is one of those times we really need to lock in, right? Mentally focus in for this stretch. And it's going to be a few minutes. So if you feel at any point this is too much information, just pause the live stream. Don't worry, it will still be waiting for you when you're ready to take in more. But this is a fair amount of information, but it's extremely, extremely important. And having this information is going to make it much more enjoyable to be on social media. So one of the big things that happened is in the early days of social media, it was designed for specific groups. So certain groups had certain platforms that they would use, right? So like Facebook was for college students. But then they decided, well, why don't we open it up for high school students? And then they decided, well, why don't we just open it up to everyone? And then they decided, why don't we allow businesses to be on our social media platform? So this is one of the biggest factors that change things, I guess you could say, as it relates to social media, and that is that social media is big business, right? There is a lot of money moving through social media, and that changes things, right? When money, and you know this, you know how when money gets involved, the whole scenario changes. And what happens, we talked about this in our previous live stream, right? And we're going to go back to one of those key points from our last live stream. But because there's money involved in social media, right? People are trying to generate money by means of social media. They want you to be watching. They want your eyes, they want your ears on social media. This is something called the attention economy, right? It's a very new concept. We talked previously about when we were talking about is your device spying on you. Back in the day, if a person, if a, they didn't fill out the Nielsen rating form, they had no clue who was watching. But now everyone's got a smart device. Everyone's got a screen or multiple screens. I've seen people, even for my live stream, they might have it on their phone and in their TV. So in case they walk away, they can keep up, right? We have multiple screens. And so because that is a thing, because we have this big business, and because in the attention economy, we are what people want. They want us, our eyes, our ears to be on them. Technology has evolved so that it is addictive is the wrong word, but that it has this impact on our minds where we want to continue to watch it. right? The psychology of social media is that it is designed from a content standpoint as well as a technological standpoint. It is designed to do one thing and one thing only: keep our attention, right? That is, if you don't get anything else from this live stream today, just remember that because social media is a core facet of the attention economy, the technology has been designed to keep our attention. They don't want us to turn it off, they don't want us to walk away. So, how do they do that? Well, it's complicated, but we're going to make it quite simple, right? The number one so called risk as it relates to social media is something called the algorithm. And you may have heard young people say this term a lot. My algorithm gave me this or that. So, this is a term maybe you've never heard, or maybe if you've heard it, it just sounds like another language. So, let's make it super simple. Maybe you or someone you went to school with, or maybe one of your children, they were really good at solving puzzles, like really fast. You could dump 1,000 piece puzzle in front of them and they can just, it doesn't take them any time at all. They put that border together and then boom, 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 boom. All the pieces are just in. They just have a mind for that sort of thing. Well, an algorithm is exactly that. It's the algorithm, or an algorithm rather, is a computer program that can quickly and efficiently solve puzzles. And I mean quickly, like a million times faster than a human could do it. So, it's, if you can just think of it that way, the algorithm is just like a computer version of a really smart kid that can solve puzzles really fast, right? That it's just a computer version of that concept. A clever kid with the ability to quickly solve puzzles. So now, how does that turn into a risk? Well, we have to remember, what puzzle is the algorithm looking to solve? Remember this from our previous live stream, right? How advertising works online. You set permissions on your device, right? That's the first thing. And then they collect cookies, so they have information about you, and then we agree to that EULA. And so by means of that, they're able to give us the ads that they think will appeal to us, right? This is how advertising online works. So for the algorithm, the way they've designed it is, how can I take what's given to me in the form of the three components to this recipe of ads, as well as what you're doing while you're on social media? So here's what that's like. It knows these things about you because we've given it app permissions, we've given the cookies, and we've agreed to the EULA, right? So now the algorithm is watching what we do. It watches our likes, it watches what we stop to look at, it watches what we comment, um, and then it watches what happens right before we leave social media. And so now it has a formula. We could say it's got a a puzzle, like all the pieces of the puzzle are there. So what it's solving for is, what should I show them next that I know will keep them scrolling? What can I show them that will keep them on this platform? That's the puzzle that the algorithm is just, it's always solving for that exact same thing, because its job, and its only job, is to keep us on social media. Does that make sense? Give me a thumbs up or a heart in the chat if that makes sense, because I know that is a very, very different concept than what you're used to. We're used to the ads; the ads just come up, and whatever the ad is, we've got no connection to them. But this is kind of like a peek behind the wall, right? Of what's happening on social media. All right, very good. I'm seeing thumbs up. I'm glad that that makes sense. Let's continue. So then, how, what is it that the algorithm is going to select to keep us watching, right? It's got a very specific way that it does this, right? So, for example, in the case of putting together puzzles, usually you do the outside first, and then that allows you to fill in the middle very quickly. It's a method that is used to solve the puzzle. Here's what the algorithm does to keep us engaged while we're on social media, right? It's got, again, a very intentional method that it uses to keep us on social media. So the first thing that it does is something called emotional triggering. Emotional triggering. This is when the algorithm chooses a piece of content that it feels, based on what it knows about you and the things that you like, your comments, that's either going to make you really angry or maybe even outraged or really sad or really happy, right? It's trying to stimulate some sort of emotion in you, because usually when we're emotionally stimulated, we lose track of time, right? So imagine like your first date. You remember your first date, um, and how it just felt like time just flew. Maybe you picked them up at 6, or maybe you met at 7, and next thing you know, you're rushing home because you're going to miss curfew, right? When you're emotionally engaged, time flies. So the algorithm will intentionally choose things that will stimulate your emotions, right? Things that will generate an emotional react, good or bad. This isn't necessarily that it's an evil thing, but remember, it's solving the puzzle of how to keep us scrolling, right? It doesn't want us to think about, oh, I've got these other things to do, right? So it'll get our emotions fired up, or get us excited, or get us really angry, right? So that we're typing furiously in the comments, right? So let's just take an example. Let's say you're a person who loves dessert, right? And your favorite dessert is brownies. Ooh, you love brownies. A fudgy one with maybe some walnuts in it or something like that. And so if the algorithm knows that about you, if it knows that you've got just a obsession with brownies, it might show you a video, and this is a silly example, but it might show you a video of someone for no reason at all just dumping a big, beautiful plate of brownies in the garbage. You see those brownies there? Imagine someone just threw them away. Your emotional reaction will be like, why would someone do such a ridiculous thing to brownies? Now, the algorithm has you emotionally triggered, as they say. So, what are they going to do next? They're going to share another piece of content that will keep you in that state. Whether this is videos, whether it's pictures, whether it's text, it doesn't matter what platform you're on. All algorithms do the exact same thing. Once they have you up, they keep you up, right? And so they might show you an ad that's related to brownies, or they may show you a some piece of content to reinforce how you feel. Maybe someone commenting on, "Can you believe these people that throw brownies in the garbage?" That sort of thing, right? So that triggering that it does, where it plays with the things that it knows that you care about, is a way that the algorithm solves the puzzle of what will keep you scrolling, right? What will keep you on social media. Again, we're talking about why the algorithm is the number one risk when we are using social media. Let's go to the next thing that the algorithm can do to keep us scrolling, and that is to control the content that we see. So, on the one hand, this can be really great. Uh, it shows you the things that you enjoy, the things that you want to learn more about. It can give you new music that matches the taste that it knows you have. It can also show you, maybe if you're a big fan of a certain sports team, it'll show you highlights or content from the players or the most recent game from that team without you even needing to search for it. It just gives it to you, and that is great. It can also serve another purpose, which is protection. So if anyone's doing anything inappropriate, it can recognize that content and say, no way. So, like child predators, violent criminals, other types of offenders, no. The algorithm can catch that, report it, and it can be removed. Right? That's a really, really great thing. That's probably one of the best things that the algorithm does, in my opinion, is that it keeps bad content off. However, we're talking about risks. There is a risk here that you need to be aware of, and that is something called an echo chamber. An echo chamber. And here's why this is a serious risk. So, everything that you like or heart or thumbs up, every person that you follow or subscribe, you're giving pieces to the algorithm for that puzzle of what will keep you going next. Because now it knows what you like, what you agree with, what your perspective is. So if it knows the things that you like, then it's probably going to continue to show you things that confirm that what you like is not just nice, but that it's right, that it is the best thing going and everything else should be ignored. Because remember, the objective is what will keep you scrolling. That's what the algorithm is trying to find out. And so, an echo chamber, imagine being in a really big room, like in a big house. If you've ever gone house shopping and maybe you tell the realtor you're looking for a certain type of house and this house has a really big living room, and you go in and every step you take you can hear that step like echo throughout the room because there's no furniture, right? So the sound's bouncing off the walls and it's a huge living room, right? And so all you can hear is the sound of your own footsteps or the voice of your realtor speaking, right? There's no other noise coming in. On social media, we can create an echo chamber for ourselves by means of the algorithm, meaning that whatever we put out there, whatever like, whatever comment we put out there, it will only show us more things that harmonize with that. Even if we're wrong, even if it's untrue, it doesn't matter. It just wants us to continue to scroll. Does that make sense? It's designed to only keep us scrolling. It's not designed to necessarily tell us the truth. It's just going to keep us scrolling. So usually, if someone is agreeing with us, we usually continue to engage with them. And so that can be a risk, right? If we see something that appeals to us, but is not true, well, then we could be at risk of misinformation. We could spread that to our peer group or things like that. And you see this happen, like all this arguing that people do on social media. Usually it's because they've been in this echo chamber hearing their own thoughts sent back to them. And so when someone expresses a difference of opinion, oh, they're furious. How could you possibly think that? Because remember, the first thing it does, the algorithm, is to emotionally trigger us, right? So that's one of the big risks associated with being on social media. But now you're aware of it. Now you know that is how the algorithm works. It solves that puzzle of what will keep you scrolling, and it uses two things to do that: emotional triggering, right? And then creating this echo chamber by means of content control. Now, that was a lot. If you need to pause it, don't worry. If you need to go back and listen to that again, don't worry. Just go ahead and do it now. The video will catch up. You can just click back until you get to that point where maybe you felt a little confusion. It's no problem. If you're feeling like, all right, I understood that. I understand that there's this computer program trying to keep me on social media by feeding me this content that, you know, I would agree with. Okay, let's keep going. The second risk associated with being on social media is fraud. Fraud is a big risk. Remember when we talked about websites and we talked about how the pop-ups on websites are very disorienting. It's hard to know if that's part of the site. It's hard to know if maybe the website's been hacked. It's hard to know if maybe it's not legitimate. Well, on social media, something very, very similar happens, right? There is a lot of fraudulent activity, and it usually comes in two forms. Well, yeah, we'll say two forms. So the first form that comes in is in the form of fake accounts and hackers, right? Fake accounts and hackers. Here's what happens is a person will create a fake account on social media so that it looks like a person maybe that you know, or maybe a person that you recognize from the media, or maybe even a politician that you support. That fake account might send you direct messages. It might comment on your post. It may even say, hey, text this phone number and we can talk off of social media, right? Now, why would they do that? What's the purpose? Well, we'll get to that in just a second. But see, these computer programs are also so sophisticated now that they can do this in a method called automation, meaning it can mock human behaviors very, very skillfully. And we'll talk about artificial intelligence in the future, and we'll talk about automation in the future and how to be aware of it, how to spot these things and protect yourself from it. For today, we won't get into it, but these fake accounts and hackers will use this technology to mimic a person that you think you know, and you may not even realize that it's not even a person, that it's a computer program that you're interacting with, right? And so it'll take what information it knows about you, it'll generate this fake account, and then it will start to interact with you. Now, that may seem far-fetched. That might seem like, oh, that's just some futuristic silliness. There's no way that that's really happening. Well, I am sad to report to you that, in fact, it is happening. And it's happening a lot. Here's one example. Here's an article from Hollywood Reporter, and you can see the date there, right? I'm not sure what date you'll be watching this, but right now, this was only 2 or 3 months ago. This is very, very new. And here's the title. This is fascinating. This is not Keanu. Inside the $1 billion celebrity impersonation Bitcoin scam. Here's the subtitle. Victims think they're talking to Keanu Reeves or Kevin Costner, then come the pleas for cash. This brazen AI fueled con that fleeces love struck fans and has Hollywood finally fighting back. Now, I'm just going to read you this paragraph right here. Or these two paragraphs. It says in November, Margaret climbed into her Toyota Camry, left her husband of 10 years at their comfortable brick home in the rural South, and drove an hour to a hotel where she was sure Kevin Costner was coming to meet her. By this point, Margaret, 73, had spent months making weekly Bitcoin deposits for Costner, totaling about $100,000. He had messaged her that he was using the money to set up a new production company where she would eventually work for him. Margaret knew that some people would find it odd that an Oscar winner and the star of Yellowstone would need financing help from a retired office manager whom he'd met on Facebook. But Margaret wasn't exactly a nobody. She had achieved some renown. Okay, I'm going to start over. She had achieved some renown for activism she'd done, even delivered a TED Talk. She was special, and Costner saw it. She was also lonely and restless as her marriage was failing. Her career had ended, and her kids and grandkids were busy with their own lives. Costner's messages represented some welcome male attention, a fantasy to drop into when real life got too real. Now, listen to this part. In one photo he sent, the actor leaned against the wooden headboard of a bed in a white t shirt, holding a piece of paper that read, "It's really me, Kevin Costner. I love you so much, Margaret. I can't wait to meet you, Margaret." This is how these fake accounts and hackers are dealing with people. And you notice this was an older person. They did not care at all that this was an older person. And of course, you know the rest of what happened. This was not real, right? And this is the article from the Hollywood Reporter here. It was not actually Kevin Costner, right? This is called a romance scam, right? A romance scam. And this is extremely, extremely popular. This is happening all over the world to many, many people. So that is a huge risk to being on social media, right? Fraud, these fake accounts and hackers, right? They're out there, and they're, as I told you, I'd answer the question, why do they do it? Because they want to get your money, right? So if a celebrity or someone slides in your DMs, be very, very cautious. It's not to say that it doesn't happen, right? I don't want you to think that there's absolutely zero chance that a celebrity has reached out to you. I've had it happen to me. My favorite actors will like respond to my comments or respond to my DMs, and we'll have a laugh, but that's as far as it goes. I know they're not going to ask me for money, or they're not going to do something like that. So they could reach out, But if they're asking for anything, any sort of information, if they want to interact with you outside of social media, like via a text message, no. And if they ask you for your password for anything, the answer is no. Just tell them absolutely not. So that's one of the big fraud risks on social media, these fake accounts and hackers. The next one is fake advertisements. And this can be really deceptive, right? Sometimes you see a deal and you're just like, there's no way they're selling a brand new iPad for 99 cents, but it looks so legitimate, right? It looks so good. Or it could be the claims of a health product. It'll get rid of varicose veins. It'll get rid of wrinkles. It'll, raise your testosterone. It'll make your hair color come back. All these claims, all this sensational stuff, most of the time are scams. Here's an example. This is just someone that's selling or they're saying, oh, I on the left hand side, oh, I got this phone for cheap. And there's even comments, people in the comments responding right to it. All of that's fake. Anything that you see where it's an advertisement, look at the name. What what is this? That does not even look like English, but everything else is in English, right? So all of these are red flags, right? If you see an ad on social media that seems too good to be true, you're probably right. If it looks too good to be true on social media, it probably is. It probably is too good to be true. So don't even let it take you in. If you see it making claims about, oh, it'll fix this or that health problem, or it's, this cheap flight to this or that place, they're just trying to get you off social media with the objective of taking your money. Now, there's one more risk associated with social media. I know this hasn't been the most fun topic, but again, you need to be aware so that you can protect yourself. The next risk that we're going to talk about on social media is oddly influencers. Now, there's some people that are quote unquote influencers on social media, and they don't really sell you anything, right? They just kind of like to show you what they do. Maybe they're an artist, or maybe they're, just a person who's independently wealthy and they like to show the trips they go on and this and that. But remember, we talked about this before. Social media is big money. And because it's big money, there are big investors who want to, just like we talked about with the algorithm, figure out what is going to keep us on social media so that they can influence us, right? Make us go in a certain direction. And that can come in a lot of forms. Maybe they want us to buy a certain thing. Maybe they want us to vote for someone. Maybe they want us to join some sort of group. There's all these different reasons, but the simple fact is that there are money behind, investors more specifically, behind a lot of these influencers. They're not just independent people doing their own thing. They are paid to influence you, and their job is to convince you that they are sincere, right? That they want you to think that this is totally above board, totally legitimate, right? And a lot of them, like me, use live streaming, right? They use live streaming to build a rapport with their audience. And transparency. That's why I like live streaming. Recorded content, it's very easy to manipulate. It's very easy to change the message. I like live streaming so that you know it's authentic. It's just me and you, and we're just talking. But the difference is I don't have a backer, right? I'm in my home office. If you knew my work and you saw me at my job and you joined one of my, work meetings, you'd see the exact same background, right? I don't have any objective except to teach you, except to make sure that you are aware that these things exist. However, there are people who are paid to do something similar, but they are trying to influence you. So in my case, yes, I do use live streaming. However, you'll never hear me recommend someone's company or product or service to you. I'm not going to repeat any politician's views or talking points, right? Because I'm not an influencer. I don't have that objective to try and sway you. I'm only here to inform you. So when you see influencers, when someone is speaking very passionately about a topic, or they're being very charismatic about a topic, just take a split second and ask yourself, is this person genuinely just sharing this information for the sake of sharing, or are they influencing me? And if they are influencing me, why? What would be their objective? What are they trying to make me do? Right? That's often the question we need to stop and ask ourselves when we recognize we're dealing with an influencer. So, a quick review. There are some risks on social media. We've got fraud. Fraud in the form of fake accounts, right? And in the form of fake advertisements. There's also, we talked about the algorithm, right? The algorithm is solving that puzzle of what to show us next to keep us online. And then, of course, we talked about another risk in the form of influencers, right? There's also influencers. Now, there's a lot of fun to be had, but there's also a lot of risks to avoid. So let's just take a minute and talk about social media safety, right? Social media safety. So when it comes to that reality, right, that not everyone on social media is trustworthy, that we can't just assume that who we're dealing with is trustworthy. Here's a few things. We may not cover all of these. You can read them yourself. You can pause the screen and read it. But number one, be very, very careful with strangers. Be super careful with strangers. Remember, you used to tell your kids, don't talk to strangers. Hey, that's still good advice. That is still good advice. Be careful when you're talking to people that you don't know, including celebrities or people that you know from the media that you recognize. Just because you recognize them does not mean that you know them or that you should trust them, right? Be careful around strangers. Also, be careful with your personal information, right? If you say, for example, oh, I've got a countdown until my vacation, 3 days until we leave our home in Des Moines, Iowa, until we go to this trip for 3 weeks in the south of France. Well, you just told someone that you're not going to be at your house for 3 weeks. That may seem harmless. You may think, well, the only person who'll see that is people I know, my friends. They will see it. But remember, social media is public. Do you really want people to know that? And for those of you that have kids and grandkids, do you really want their picture and their name and the school that they go to and all that information on social media? Something to think about. Again, going back to the ads, if it's too good to be true, it probably is. Is it fake news? If you're even asking yourself that, the answer is probably. Sometimes people will send you links. The nice thing about most social media platforms is it shows you where that link will take you. If you read the name of that website and it doesn't look familiar, if it's not something that's reputable, don't even click on it. We talked about that on how to be safe when it comes to that sort of thing. Also, who posted this video? Maybe it seems legitimate, but who posted it and why? Am I being influenced? And of course, you know I harp on this a million times. Don't share your password via text message. In fact, don't text anyone your password ever. Unless you're putting it on the site that you're planning to use or in the app that you're planning to use, just don't do it. Better safe than sorry. Now, my friends, we have covered a lot today. A lot today. Um, at any point, if you need to go back and review anything, the video will be here, right? Just go to YouTube, type in friendly tech help, and it'll pop up. Go to the page and review it. Oh, sorry, there's a question in the chat that I meant to answer, and I will do it now. The phrase slides in your DMs. I did use that phrase. That phrase is when a person responds to a direct message that you send them. So you can send direct messages on various social media platforms, TikTok, YouTube, different ones like that. Um, and so that's just like a colloquial phrase there, slide in your DMs. But it means they just respond to your direct message, or they are just sending you a message, maybe that you didn't even send them anything. Now, we didn't get specific about what social media networks you should or should not use. Not getting into that, but there are some that are notorious for misinformation, for influencers that are trying to sway your opinion, ones that have algorithms with a very clear and known agenda to give you a certain type of content. Be very aware of that, especially if the social media platform has a AI attached to it, which is most of them. Be very careful, right? It can do a lot of trickery that maybe you're not accustomed to recognizing. But speaking of which, next week, be sure to check for our live streams. We will be talking a little bit about AI. We won't get too deep into it, but we're going to talk about AI. We may talk about even how to recognize if something is AI, and we'll take a couple of examples as well. And well, I won't spoil the rest. Go to Friendly Tech Help on YouTube, and you will see our schedule. I'll have that up by the weekend so that you can review it. A big thanks to my live viewers, and thank you for those of you that have watched to the very, very end. We appreciate the support. As always, we are going to keep closing that digital divide together. We'll see you on the next one.